I flatlined twice on the operating table while my daughter ignored the hospital's calls because she was at her husband's birthday party. That was the part I didn't know until later. What I remembered was the pressure in my chest. It started around 8:30 on a Friday night, just after I locked the side door at Mercer Heating Supply in Dayton. I'd stayed late to finish an order for a contractor in Kettering. The warehouse was quiet except for the old ceiling fan clicking above the loading dock. I bent down to pick up my thermos and pain hit me so hard I grabbed the edge of a pallet to stay upright. At first I told myself it was heartburn. That's what men my age do when we know better. Then my left arm went numb. I managed to call 911. I don't remember much after that. Later, Ray Coleman, my foreman and oldest friend, told me the paramedics found me sitting on the concrete floor, back against a stack of furnace filters. At Miami Valley Hospital, they cut off my gray work shirt and rushed me into surgery. A nurse named Tasha Reynolds found my emergency contact in my phone, my daughter Lauren. Tasha called her at 8:43 p.m. According to the nurse's notes, there was music in the background. People were laughing. Someone was singing happy birthday. Tasha said, "Your father is in emergency surgery. The doctor needs to speak with you." Lauren answered, "Just text me. I'm at my husband's birthday party." The surgeon got on the phone and told her I might not make it through the night. She said, "I can't leave right now. Call me if something changes." Then she hung up. While they made that call, my heart stopped once. A few minutes later, it stopped again. The surgeons brought me back both times. Ray arrived around 10. One of my employees had called him after seeing the ambulance leave the warehouse. He sat in the waiting room all night in his work boots and navy jacket drinking bad coffee from a paper cup. Lauren never came. At 4:16 the next morning, the doctors finally stabilized me. Tasha called Lauren again and left a voicemail. The next day, Lauren texted the hospital number. 6 words. "Glad he made it. Keep me updated." I didn't see that message until days later. But when I finally did, lying in a hospital bed with wires on my chest, Ray asleep in the chair beside me, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, just enough. When I opened my eyes for the first time, I thought I'd slept through the weekend. The room was quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. My mouth felt like sandpaper. Every breath reminded me somebody had cut my chest open. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. A nurse noticed I was awake and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Mercer. Take it easy. You've been through a lot." The first face I recognized wasn't my daughter's. It was Ray's. He was asleep in a plastic chair by the window, chin on his chest, still wearing the same navy jacket I'd seen him wear almost every winter for 20 years. "Ray," I whispered. His eyes opened immediately. Well, he laughed softly, rubbing his face. "About time you decided to come back." He looked exhausted, beard grown in, boots dusty, like he hadn't gone home in days. "What day is it?" "Monday." I frowned. "I've been here that long. You scared the hell out of everybody." "Everybody." That word stayed with me. "Where's Lauren?" Ray hesitated. "She hasn't made it in yet." I nodded slowly. "Probably working." He didn't answer. At the time, I wasn't suspicious. Lauren did part-time bookkeeping for Derek's sports bar. Maybe she couldn't leave. Maybe she'd been calling while I was unconscious. There are 100 excuses a parent invents before accepting the obvious. That afternoon, Nurse Tasha came in to check my medication. "Tasha." "That's me. You were here the night I came in." I was. I thanked her for helping save my life. She shrugged. "You've got a very good surgical team." Then I asked the question that had been bothering me. "My daughter, did she come that night?" Tasha paused just long enough for me to notice. "No, sir." "They reached her." "Yes." "The doctor talked to her?" "Yes, sir." She didn't criticize Lauren, didn't roll her eyes. She simply answered each question honestly. That somehow hurt more. I stared out the window toward the parking garage. I figured maybe she didn't know how serious it was. The surgeon explained everything. Maybe Lauren had panicked. Maybe Derek needed her. Maybe she froze. I kept handing her reasons she hadn't earned. Beat. That evening, Ray helped me unlock my phone. Dozens of missed calls. Messages from suppliers. Messages from employees asking how I was. Flowers from the warehouse crew. One delivery caught my attention. A bouquet of white lilies. The card read, "Get well soon. Love, Lauren and Derek." No handwritten note. No, I'm sorry. No, I wish I'd been there. Just the kind of message you send someone with the flu. Ray quietly moved the vase to the windowsill. "You hungry?" he asked, changing the subject. I let him. Before Ellen died 5 years earlier, she'd made me promise not to let bitterness take over my life. Lauren had been wonderful during her mother's cancer treatments. Drove us to appointments, picked up prescriptions, slept in hospital chairs beside Ellen. That was the daughter I kept seeing whenever I closed my eyes. Not the woman who skipped emergency surgery for a birthday party. The next morning while Ray stepped out for coffee, I opened my banking app. A notification caught my attention. Scheduled business transfer, $81,600. Recipient DMD Hospitality Group. DMD. Derek Michael Dawson. My daughter's husband. Something inside me went cold. Ray drove me home 14 days after the surgery. The ride from Miami Valley Hospital to Beaver Creek took less than 20 minutes, but it felt longer. Every red light gave me time to think about the transfer. $81,600. That wasn't spending money. That was the reserve I kept for payroll, truck repairs, emergency equipment, and the slow weeks that always came after Christmas. At the house, Ray carried my bag inside and opened the fridge. "Frank," he said, holding up a carton of milk, "this expired while you were busy dying." "Throw it out." "Bread too." "Everything that can testify against me." He smiled, but I could tell he was worried. After he left, the house felt too quiet. Ellen's old wall clock ticked above the kitchen doorway. Unopened mail sat on the counter. The lilies from Lauren had already started turning brown. At 10:07, I called Fifth Third Bank. After being passed between fraud services and business banking, I reached a woman named Denise. "Mr. Mercer, I see a scheduled outgoing transfer for $81,600 to DMD Hospitality Group. That's my son-in-law's company. I also see 2 completed transfers totaling $12,400. My hand tightened around the phone. "When?" "The first was 3 days after your admission, the second 5 days later." Lauren's authorized access was still active, tied to a durable financial power of attorney I'd signed years earlier, back when Ellen was sick and Lauren was helping with bills and groceries. Giving her access had seemed responsible then. Now it felt like I'd left the front door open and handed her a map. "Can you stop the 81,000? We can place a temporary freeze while it's reviewed." "Freeze it." By 10:52, Derek had left a voicemail. "Frank, you're confused. Don't do anything until we talk." At 11:09, a black Tahoe pulled into my driveway. Lauren came up the walk fast and started pounding on the door. When I opened it, she didn't ask how I felt. "What did you do to the account?" "Which account?" Her face changed, only slightly, but enough. She walked into the living room without taking off her shoes. Designer handbag, fresh manicure, gold earrings Ellen had given her on her 30th birthday. She dressed for a business meeting, not for family. "I need you to unfreeze the account." No hug, no apology, no "I'm glad you're alive," just business. I lowered myself into my recliner. "Why?" "Derek's loan closes tomorrow. The bank needs to see the funds." "So the money was never for me?" "It was an investment." "Funny. I don't remember investing in sports bars." "Dad, you'd have gotten every penny back." "Did you ask me?" "You were unconscious." Most people take that as a reason to wait. The old wall clock ticked above the fireplace. I had power of attorney. You had permission to help me. I was helping. The bar was in trouble. If it closed, 12 people would lose their jobs. I remember Derek saying almost the same thing years earlier, asking me for $20,000 to open the place. Back then, I'd written the check because Lauren believed in him. Now she expected me to believe the same story twice. "I already know about the $12,400. The color drained from her face. "You checked?" I checked. "That wasn't stealing." I didn't use that word. It was temporary. "What was it spent on?" She didn't answer. "What was my money spent on, Lauren?" "Business expenses." That answer sounded rehearsed. I'd owned a business for 35 years. People with honest books rarely use the phrase business expenses like a shield. I walked to the dining table where my discharge papers sat beside a legal pad. "I've already called an attorney." "You what?" "I need to understand my rights." "Dad, you don't need a lawyer. You're on pain medication. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly." That sentence landed harder than anything else she'd said. Not because it was insulting, because it sounded prepared, as if she and Derek had already discussed exactly how to handle me. She stood and grabbed her purse. "Maybe someone should make financial decisions until you're fully recovered." I had survived open heart surgery. Now my own daughter was suggesting I wasn't fit to run my own life. After she left, I called Ray. "I think we've got a bigger problem than the money." "What happened?" I watched the Tahoe pull away. "I think they're getting ready to convince a judge I can't take care of myself anymore." The next morning, Ray picked me up at 8. "I made you oatmeal," he said. "I was hoping for bacon. The surgeon would hunt me down. I don't think he knows where I live. He'd find you. I laughed, then regretted it. My chest reminded me I wasn't as recovered as I wanted to believe. At the office of Chen and Wallace Estate Law, Mia Chen, who'd helped Ellen and me write our wills 6 years earlier, read through the documents I'd emailed her. Frank Lauren had brought authority. I know, but that authority came with a legal duty. Everything she did had to benefit you, not herself, not her husband. So moving company money into Derek's business could be considered self-dealing. The words sounded colder than theft, somehow more serious. I trusted her. I know. She explained the freeze had only stopped the large transfer. Recovering the $12,400 already gone would likely require legal action. Then she said something I hadn't expected. The bigger issue isn't the money. They're questioning your mental capacity. Lauren hinted at that yesterday. If they file for guardianship, the court won't decide whether you're a good father. It'll decide whether you're capable of managing your own affairs. I'd spent 35 years building Mercer Heating Supply. 7 employees depended on me. If a judge believed I couldn't manage my finances, suppliers would hear about it. Customers would hear about it. Banks would hear about it. My entire reputation could vanish faster than the money. Did you ever tell Lauren she could invest company funds in Derek's business? Number. Promise to help buy him out of debt. Number. Verbally approve this transfer. Number. She made a note. Good. It isn't much of a victory, it's simply the truth. On the drive home, Ray glanced over. You okay? I keep thinking about Ellen. She wanted Lauren to have someone she could trust if anything happened to us. I signed those papers because I wanted my daughter protected. I never imagined I'd need protection from the same signature. That afternoon, Mia called. Frank, they've filed an emergency petition. They're asking the court to appoint Lauren as temporary guardian over your finances, arguing you're mentally impaired. For the first time since leaving the hospital, I felt genuinely afraid. I hardly slept that night. It wasn't the pain the medication handled most of that. It was my mind that wouldn't settle. At 6 the next morning, Mia called again. Frank, can you meet me in an hour? Her office table was covered in folders. They filed more than I expected. The first paragraph of Lauren's petition hit me like another heart attack. Frank Mercer has demonstrated impaired judgment following a significant cardiac event and appears vulnerable to financial manipulation. They're saying I'm the one being manipulated. They're arguing Ray has influenced your decisions, and Lauren describes herself as your primary caregiver. She spent maybe 15 minutes in my house. There was also a cognitive evaluation request. An independent physician would determine whether I was mentally capable of handling my finances. So I have to prove I'm still myself. I'm afraid so. 2 days later, I sat in a neurologist's office answering questions that would have sounded ridiculous a month earlier. What day is it? Who's the governor of Ohio? What medications are you taking? Remember 3 words. Draw a clock. Subtract numbers. For a moment, I couldn't remember the 3rd word. My stomach tightened. Was it the surgery, the medication, or just nerves? 5 seconds later, it came back. That's perfectly normal, the doctor said. It didn't feel normal. Walking back to Ray's truck, I understood for the first time why older people get frightened after a medical crisis. One forgotten word and people start wondering whether you should still be trusted with your own life. The next few days weren't easier. A supplier refused to ship until my account issue was resolved. Payroll was due Friday. I couldn't lift equipment, couldn't drive. Ray was opening the warehouse before sunrise and closing it after dark. On Thursday afternoon, Lauren called. Her voice was softer. Dad, can we talk? She arrived alone. No Derek, no attitude, just tired eyes. She sat across from me and started crying. I'm sorry I wasn't at the hospital. Derek's bar was collapsing. If we lost it, everything we'd built would disappear. I waited. Then she said what she'd really come to say. If you release the money, I'll withdraw the guardianship petition. The tears suddenly made sense. This wasn't an apology, it was a negotiation. I looked at my daughter for a long time. Then I quietly shook my head. Number. Then don't blame me when the judge decides you can't take care of yourself. After the door closed, my phone rang. It was Mia. We just traced where the first $12,400 went. You need to see this. The next morning, Ray and I sat across from Mia's laptop. A bank statement, a credit card record, an invoice from an entertainment company in Cincinnati. $4,800, Mia said, pointing. It came from the money Lauren transferred out of your account. I read the description twice. Mechanical, bull. Ray leaned closer. You've got to be kidding me. The invoice listed the equipment by name Sir Bucks-a-Lot. Not a rental. Derek had bought the thing outright. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so unbelievably ridiculous. I nearly died. My daughter emptied part of my emergency fund, and her husband bought a mechanical bull named Sir Bucks-a-Lot. There's more, Mia said. A custom neon sign, Derek's Dynasty, $3,900. Premium bourbon inventory. Designer whiskey glasses with the bar's logo. Advertising banners. None of it looked like the emergency Lauren had described. So the story about saving 12 jobs? It doesn't match a single line of these records, Mia said. If the bar was truly about to close, you don't buy a $4,000 mechanical bull and a designer neon sign in the same month. Those are expansion expenses, Frank, not survival expenses. That distinction stayed with me. Lauren hadn't just misused the money. She'd used a crisis she invented to fund something that was never a crisis to begin with. Mia opened one more file and email between Derek and Lauren dated 2 weeks before my heart attack. Subject line loan update. Derek, the bank said no again. We have to find another way. Lauren, that evening, Dad would never let us lose everything. He'll forgive me once the place turns around. I felt something tighten in my throat. Not anger, sadness. She hadn't expected permission. She'd expected forgiveness. There's a difference. A painful one. I remembered Lauren at 12 standing beside me in the garage after backing her bike into my pickup, crying harder over that tiny dent than I had. Back then, she'd apologized before I even saw the damage. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped asking first. And I'd probably helped build that version of her. Every overdue bill I quietly paid, every mistake I fixed, every time I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Maybe I'd confused love with rescue. Maybe she had too. Are you planning to cut Lauren out of your will, Mia asked. I thought I was. And now, I don't know. I want to protect what's left, but I don't want revenge to become another mistake. Then don't make permanent decisions while you're hurting. Instead, we made practical ones. I signed paperwork revoking Lauren's power of attorney, removed her from every business account. A new trust would eventually replace my old estate plan with an independent trustee managing any future inheritance, so that if Lauren ever received anything from me again, it would never pass through Derek's hands. Mia's assistant stepped in. Frank, your hearing was just moved up. Tomorrow morning. I barely touched breakfast the next day. Half a piece of toast, 1 cup of coffee. You don't have to do this today, Ray said. Yes, I do. You could ask for more time. I've been giving Lauren more time for 34 years. I'd called Lauren the night before. Meet me before court. I don't want our next conversation to happen in front of a judge. She arrived 5 minutes late, alone. No makeup, hair in a loose ponytail. She reminded me of the young mother she'd been after her son, Ethan, was born. For a moment, I almost forgot everything. Almost. I've asked Mia to prepare an agreement, I said. If you withdraw the petition, admit the money was moved without my permission, agree to repay it, and promise never to touch my finances again, I'll stop this from becoming a bigger legal fight. She blinked. You'd do that. I don't want to punish you. I want my life back, that's all. For the first time in weeks, I saw tears that looked real. I never wanted to hurt you. I believe you convinced yourself you were helping. Derek said we'd lose everything. He kept saying once the loan came through, we'd pay you back. The loan had already been denied, Lauren. 2 weeks before I even had the heart attack. You knew that when you told me it was an investment. She lowered her eyes. I didn't want to believe it. That at least sounded true. Then the restaurant door opened. Derek walked in uninvited straight to our booth. What is this? Derek, I told you not to meet him alone. He turned to me. You enjoying this? You're destroying our lives over money that would have been Lauren's eventually. Inheritance isn't an advance. You promised to help us. I helped you. $20,000 6 years ago, no questions asked. You controlled us. Ray stood from the next booth. Take it easy, Derek. I'm talking to my father-in-law. You're talking to a man recovering from open-heart surgery. Derek leaned across the table. If the bar closes, that's on you. No, it's on the man who bought a mechanical bull with borrowed money before he'd earned a dime of it. Lauren looked back and forth between us. Derek, please. He grabbed her purse. We're leaving. She didn't move. He lowered his voice. If you stay here. He stopped himself. But I heard enough. So did Lauren. She slowly stood. I'm sorry, Dad. Then she walked out with him. I sat there watching them climb into the Tahoe. A familiar pressure started building in my chest. I reached for my nitroglycerin. For one frightening minute, I wondered if I was heading back to the hospital instead of the courthouse. I've spent my whole life protecting her from consequences, I told Ray once the pain eased. I know. Maybe that's exactly how we ended up here. Is sur wem. An hour later, we walked into the Greene County Courthouse. Lauren and Derek were already inside, 3 relatives beside them. When they saw me, they looked away. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Polished wood rows of benches, an American flag behind the bench, a ceiling fan humming overhead. At 9 o'clock, Judge Evelyn Brooks entered. Everyone stood. Lauren's attorney spoke first, painting the picture of a frightened daughter trying to protect an aging father. He described my heart attack, my surgery, my medication, the temporary memory problems that sometimes follow cardiac arrest. Mr. Mercer has made several sudden financial decisions while recovering from a significant medical event. My client is simply trying to ensure his affairs are properly managed until he's fully recovered. It sounded reasonable. That was the dangerous part. He wasn't lying about everything. He was arranging the facts to tell a different story. Lauren testified next, her voice shaking. I was terrified. I honestly believed my father wasn't thinking clearly after the surgery. Her attorney asked why she transferred the money. My father always wanted to help us with the business. I believed he would have approved. Believed. That word carried a lot of weight. Believing something isn't the same as asking. When it was Mia's turn, she stood without drama. Your Honor, I'd like to begin with Mr. Mercer's medical evaluation. The independent neurologist testified to every cognitive test I'd completed, memory, reasoning, judgment, decision-making, then looked at the judge. In my professional opinion, Mr. Mercer is fully competent to manage his own financial affairs. Lauren lowered her head. Nurse Tasha Reynolds came next, carrying the hospital's records. Mia asked only a handful of questions. Did you contact Mr. Mercer's emergency contact? Yes. Who was that? His daughter. What did you tell her? That her father was in emergency surgery and might not survive the night. What was her response? Tasha opened her notes. She stated, "Just text me. I'm at my husband's birthday party." The courtroom went completely silent. Even Derek stopped tapping his fingers. Mia handed the judge the hospital call log, then turned to the clerk. Your Honor, we'd also like to introduce a publicly posted video from that same evening. The lights dimmed. On the monitor, Derek's birthday party. Music, laughter, balloons, someone carrying a bourbon-shaped cake. Then Lauren's phone rings. The music quiets just enough for everyone to hear her voice. Just text me. I'm at my husband's birthday party. She turns the phone over, raises her glass, smiles. The timestamp matched the hospital records exactly. No one said a word as the screen went dark. Then Mia introduced the bank records, every transfer, every dollar, every destination, and the fraud investigator explained they'd been initiated while I was unconscious, using Lauren's financial authority. Finally, Mia placed the last document on the screen, an invoice. Judge Brooks read it once, then again. She looked at Derek. Mr. Dawson, the emergency business expense you described was a mechanical bull named Sir Bucks-a-Lot. A few people in the courtroom couldn't help smiling. It was a promotional investment, Derek said. I'm sure the bull appreciated the investment. Even the court reporter laughed before covering her mouth. It was the first time all morning the tension broke. But only for a moment. Judge Brooks closed the file and looked directly at Lauren. Ms. Dawson, this court is not here to decide whether you're a good daughter. We're here to decide whether your father is capable of managing his own affairs and whether you exercised your authority in his best interest. The evidence answers both questions. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The independent medical evaluation finds Mr. Mercer fully competent. The hospital records establish that you were informed your father might not survive emergency surgery. The banking records show funds were transferred from accounts under your authority into a company owned by your husband. And the documentation regarding those expenditures speaks for itself. The courtroom was silent. The petition for guardianship is denied. I closed my eyes. Not because I'd won, because I could finally breathe. Judge Brooks wasn't finished. Mr. Mercer will immediately retain sole authority over all financial decisions. The existing power of attorney is revoked. Any future access to Mr. Mercer's accounts or property shall require his direct authorization. The financial transfers already completed may proceed through the appropriate civil process. Nothing in today's ruling prevents Mr. Mercer from seeking restitution. Based on the evidence presented, this court will also forward the record to the appropriate agency for review regarding possible elder financial exploitation. The gavel struck once. That concludes this matter. E quindi the scene. People began standing. I remained seated, my legs suddenly heavier than they'd been after surgery. Ray squeezed my shoulder. You did it. No, the truth did. Across the room, Derek stuffed papers into his briefcase without pretending to organize them. Lauren tried to say something to him. He pulled away. No, he snapped loud enough for several people to hear. This is your fault. Derek, you said he'd never fight back. I didn't know. You didn't know anything. He walked out without looking back. Lauren stood there alone. For the first time all morning, she looked like a frightened little girl instead of a confident adult. She walked over to me. Her eyes were red. Dad, I'm sorry. No speech, no excuses, just 2 words. I believe she meant them. But I also knew apologies don't erase choices. I think my marriage is over, she said, glancing toward the hallway where Derek had disappeared. No, I answered quietly. I didn't ruin your marriage. I simply stopped paying for it. She lowered her head. Neither of us spoke again. You see. 3 months later, Derek's sports bar closed its doors. The mechanical bull was repossessed in the middle of the afternoon. While customers watched from the sidewalk, Ray told me it was the most talked about thing on local Facebook groups for a week. Lauren moved into a small apartment after filing for divorce. She found a bookkeeping job with a plumbing company and began making monthly payments toward the money she'd taken. Not because a judge forced her, because she'd finally accepted responsibility. As for me, I changed more than my legal documents. I asked Ray to become my healthcare representative. Not because he expected anything from me, because when my life was hanging by a thread, he showed up. Lauren and I didn't magically become close again. About 6 months later, she asked if we could meet for breakfast at the same Bob Evans, where we'd had our last honest conversation before court. She didn't ask for money, didn't ask about the will. She simply wanted coffee. That was enough for me. Trust isn't rebuilt with promises. It's rebuilt one ordinary day at a time. Looking back, I don't think revenge was the most satisfying part of this story. The real victory was learning that loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from every consequence. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for them and for yourself is to draw a line and keep it. If you've ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and protecting yourself, I hope you know you're not alone. Thank you for spending this time with me. And if my story meant something to you, I'd be honored if you came back for the next one.